Call this meeting to order. If you please stand for the pledge.
The United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Agmar-Boza.
Oh. Here.
Ms. Brashali.
Here.
Mr. Campo.
Here.
Ms. Childs.
Here.
Mr. Clonis. Mr. Condon. Mr. Denbeck.
Here.
Ms. Driscoll.
Here.
Mr. Fioravanti.
Here.
Mr. Fisher. Mr. Gauthier.
Here.
Mr. Gerard.
Here.
Mr. Goldstein.
Here.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Healy.
Here.
Ms. Jessic.
Here.
Mr. Keeley.
Here.
Ms. Khan.
Here.
Mr. Monahan.
Here.
Ms. Mooreshead.
Here.
Ms. Mullen.
Present.
Ms. Mullen Cole.
Here.
Mr. Olinsu.
Here.
Ms. Stewart Jelinas.
Here.
Mr. Segru.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Chorus is on.
We have one person on phone. Harry?
Yep, you got it.
Can I have it? You want to go ahead and verify? Okay. Thanks, Harry. Okay, number 3 on the agenda, to elect the moderator for the RTM. I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to nominate Paul Goldstein.
Second. Ryan seconded it. Okay, do you want to do the vote now, or do you go any other? Yeah. Yep, okay. Are there any other nominations for moderator? Any other nominations for moderator? Any other nominations for moderator? Vote. You need it for the record? Thank you. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I set up all the microphones today. Be sure to use them, the recording device, and this is more for the new people, can't pick you up if you don't speak into the microphone, so just ask your neighbor for the microphone. Plus we have a lot of people here and they do need to hear you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good evening, folks. Next up on the agenda is item C, or item D, to consider an act upon the minutes of the October 2nd, 2023 regular meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? No. Counselor Campo.
I left on your, I left in your places a letter from Lorette Sala, which was part of her public comment at the last meeting. Her name wasn't on the list and it wasn't signed, so it wasn't entered into the record, but I'd like to have that entered into the record if we could. I'd get a motion for that.
Friendly amendment, is that okay? Folks? Sue? Sue and Bono? Representative Bono, is that okay?
Just give it a
check every once in a while.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion on the floor to accept the minutes of the October 2nd, 2023 regular meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Moving on to item E, you have correspondence. In your packet, you had the annual or quarterly finance report from the treasurer. In addition to that, you had a Oswegatchie Fire Building Committee report from Chairman Teneski as well as Representative Olensu. On your desk, when you came in tonight, you had correspondence from Chairperson Gerard, Representative Gerard, regarding the Energy Task Force. You also had, from the Waterford Police Department, data pertaining to total calls as well as the fire department. There's also correspondence from the fire department from the quarterly report of the volunteer firefighters and the police incentive program. There's also a letter from Lorette Solar pertaining to the data center. We also have from Representative Condon, Chairperson of the Public Protection and Safety, a standing subcommittee report. There's also a letter from Representative Condon pertaining to open burning ordinance that will take under possibly new business at the end of the meeting. And last but not least, there was a letter from Selectman Rule regarding social services grant committees. Moving on to item F, public comment. Before we begin public comment, for members, new members as well as members of the public that may not have been here before, public comment is a time for the public to comment on any item that they would like to, even if it's not on the agenda. We will not be responding back and forth. It's the public's time to give us their opinions or suggestions or comments on any topic. Once public comment is over, we will declare public comment closed so that we can move on to agenda. Your comment may be discussed on one of the agenda items, or it may be taken up under new business at the end of the meeting if we need to. Please, so that we can get everybody involved, if you could try and keep your comments to about 3 minutes, that way we can move the meeting along. It's understandable that sometimes it'll get a little longer, but if you could, please keep it to 3 minutes if possible, so that we can get the meeting moving along and we're not here at a late hour. With that said, I have a list to start, and on that list is Helen Kwasniewski, Helen.
Hi, my name is Helen Kwasniewski. Hi, my name is Helen Kwasniewski. I live in Cordell. And under item 5, the fire marshal fee, I would like to also see fire pit permit to be in there. In reality, that is an open burn. I have had issues with open burn and fire pits. And when you see something, you say something, and you get threatening messages. I don't like that. So I like to see, the fire pits to be included in the fee, but there's still open burn. And I also want this board to know what's important to me, it should be important to you guys too. How one board member, fully senior citizen, all due to political signs, that this individual employed and wasted resources of the Waterford Police Department. all political signs should be banned due to a lot of complaints this year, especially from the Democrats. I do see other, I see committee on committees be formed. I feel that this person should not be, or this person should be banned from all town boards. The key word here is bullying senior citizens. Now I know why their mascot is who they have. I wanna thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tina Dubosque.
Good evening, my name is Tina Dubosc, I live in Quaker Hill, and I've been working since last summer, with the, Concern Committee, Waterford Group, regarding the data center. I just wanna say quickly, I am appalled at the lack of attention to the general public over this enormous project that is going through this town. It's horrible, you guys need to pick a date and have a public discussion about this, and, First Selectman hasn't responded to our requests for that. And I really wish that you would do something about it, because we are. And, we're trying to get as many people informed about what's going on. And I'm glad that you're going to have an update on the data center tonight, I'm eager to hear that. But I wish that you would include the town, all the residents in a discussion, because it will affect many, many people, and not just in Waterford, in East Lyme and Niantic as well. That's all, thank you.
James Esposito.
James Esposito, 7 Winter Green Drive, Quaker Hill. I grew up in Waterford, Quaker Hill my whole life, and I'm in the local 547 union. I have been in the union several years, and this is a good opportunity for all of us union members to be close to home, good wages and benefits. I have a young family, a young daughter, and this is more time for me to be close to her. We do a lot of traveling in our job, and it's just a good benefit for us to be closer. So, thank you.
Beth Sedalia.
Beth Sedalia, 132 Oswegatchie Road. Feels really good to be on this side of the microphone. But I will say to the incumbents that were reelected, thank you for coming back. And for those of you that have stepped up to serve for the first time, you're really going to enjoy learning how the town works. So thank you for your service. Thank you for leaving your families to come here and support the town. I am here to speak on behalf of the data center. As some of you may know, I'm an attorney, but we are a local 777 family. My husband is a pipe fitter. We obtain health insurance through our union. We obtain a pension through our union. All the things that a small business owner doesn't have in your community. So I want you to consider that when you think about the union jobs. Think about the families that are supported both through benefits, wages, retirement, and fairness in service. Safety standards are important. So I applaud you that you are bringing this issue to the fore. I think engagement is particularly crucial when you're talking about a $230 million project over 30 years. I think that the town has made steps to secure its position through the fee agreement, and the balance is left to the regulatory authorities. That being said, you have the duty to continue to engage people so that you can hear from people like me and people from the lady in Quaker Hill, so that this is a holistic decision for the betterment of the people of the town. Just remember, there are people like me in the town that depend on the union and the union jobs that we produce. So thank you for your service, and I thank you for your time.
Chris Fowler?
Chris Taylor, 16th Avenue. I'm here to speak about the data center. Just like Mrs. Abelia said, I'm a member of Local 777 and a 20-year resident of Waterford. My family is supported by Local 777. I live inside the affected area where the data center is going to be built. And I think it's a good thing for Waterford because I can see our taxes climbing because of costs. And this will help offset those costs. And I just hope that everybody considers our families and everybody that's affected by it. Thank you.
Joe Toner?
Good evening, Joe Toner, Quaker Hill. Congratulations to the new members. I'd like to wish everybody happy holidays. I'm the executive director with the Connecticut State Building Trades Council, and I'm happy to live here in Waterford, to be quite honest with you. I think one of the things that the folks previously that have been on the board know that their due diligence process is taking place. Studies are being done, negotiations are being had, and that's in the best interest of all the folks from Waterford. One of the things I don't think is great here tonight is when we start bringing up other towns wanting to get in the middle of what's in the best interest for the development of Waterford. I don't know when's the last time Diana reached out to you and asked you what's in the best interest of their citizens or East Line. This is a good development. It's going to bring strong union jobs to the community. And on top of that, it's going to stabilize the mill rate for the next 20 years. When you're coming back from the store, which we all do, right? And a bag of groceries is costing you $200, and they said a couple of years ago it was due to inflation, it's not going to change, folks. Our young folks are paying $2,000 a month in rents. These are realities that we're facing. We have an opportunity now with this data center to make sure we stabilize the tax rate, provide good benefits, good union jobs, and tie these jobs into the high school in Waterford to make sure these folks are having direct entries into the unionized construction industry, driving 5 minutes down the street to go to work. It's incredible. This is an incredible opportunity. This is once in a lifetime. And please, let's stay focused on what's the best interest for the folks in Waterford. If folks in Waterford have a concern, they certainly should be addressed. But when folks are coming from outside the town and they want to dictate how we should conduct business, I don't think that's in the best interest of every taxpayer in this town. So thank you for your time, and the building trades are very supportive of this process, and we're going to make sure that 1 out of every 4 construction worker is going to work on that project. And that's going to be 1 million man hours it's going to produce for us in our industry. 250,000 man hours are going to be reproduced and regenerated into this local economy. That's about $25 million of direct impact to the union members and the building trades that live in Waterford. That's second to none, folks. So don't let the boogeyman scare you, because he's not there. Let's do the due diligence, let's go through the process and move this forward. And thank you for the time, and have a great holiday.
Don Barnes?
Good evening, how are you? I'm Don Barnes. I'm a business agent for the Teamsters Local 493. Going back, my grandparents are from Waterford. They had 14 children. Out of all those 14 children, they all resided through Waterford with 7, 8, 9, 10. I come from a real big family. I love this town. I raised my children here, and I'm a 3rd generation Teamster. My son is a fourth generation Teamster, and I have a grandson on his way to be the fifth generation Teamster. This, as a union member, this project holds residency requirements, which means it will let my son and my grandson just work right down the street with a nice steady job, with health care for my grandchildren, and I couldn't support this data center enough, and thank you for your time.
Karen Bohan?
I didn't actually sign up on the thing, but I'll come talk anyway.
Karen Dohm, I live in Pleasure Beach. There's a great deal of representation here this evening from the unions and the Teamsters and Quaker Hill. In a nutshell, I think everyone is making a valid point here in terms of a give and take and one side and another side, or two sides two ways to look at this. However, I think there are very real and legitimate concerns regarding, and I overheard some conversations this evening sort of poo-pooing this concept, but regarding the environmental impact of such a project. I'm also very concerned about the history and reputation of Northeast Edge, which is a very shady and nefarious reputation. And I feel that people are getting a little too eager to jump into bed too quickly with this group, who have had a turnover in the last 5 years of almost as many companies under their banner. And ultimately, there has been a lot of talk about how much employment, in fact, will be provided by this project. However, in the end, the data center itself, it would appear, would be run and operated by approximately 200 very highly specialized, highly trained specialists, experts. So in the end run, be it 7 years, be it 10 years, who can say that is if this company even finishes this project or begins it, which it has a reputation for not doing. That leaves 200 regular, high-paying jobs in the end game. And all the people that put their hard work into building the project would ultimately be back where they started from. Now, there is plenty of data to support what I'm saying, but I think I've used up my time. I'm not anti-union, not anti any of that. But I do feel that there has not been enough transparency from Town Hall. We have been for months now petitioning Mr. Brule and others to hear us in a public forum. We have been consistently ignored and denied. This also includes ignoring the local press with only very brief comments about how great this is all going to be. But when it comes to, we have petitioned for an open forum and essentially being denied by being ignored. And I think going forward, if we can continue with more open meetings on this specific subject, in the absence of all the other minor things that may be discussed here this evening. I shouldn't say minor, but this is a major, major thing here. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry for running on. I'm a little surprised to be called on because I didn't sign up, or maybe that's what I did sign, so maybe that invalidates everything I'm saying. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Good job, Karen.
Jim Denning?
Denny, 11 Old Mill Road, Quaker Hill. I'm in support of the data centers. I think it's gonna be a great project. Turner Construction, I've worked many years with them. They're a good outfit. They're the CM for the project. There's never any issues with those guys.
There's no nonsense to get the job done. Everything that this town's been doing going forward with the PLA and everything, it's a great win for the union members and for the residents with the tax breaks. I thank you for your time.
John C. Valaire.
Good evening to you all. First of all, congratulations to those who were re-elected and those who are newly elected, as the case may be. Resident of Millstone Point, 294 Millstone Road East, here to express my opposition to the data center at Dominion Power Plant. As new members or maybe coming back members of the RTM, I would strongly caution you to proceed with caution. The hosting agreement, I don't know how many have actually read it from cover to cover. I have, and I will say that it was poorly drafted, or it was drafted by the company that's trying to get the benefit from the town. Frankly, the host agreement was approved under the radar, and what I mean by that is that there was very little, if none, and no caution or telling to the folks that are severely impacted by this project, which is the neighborhoods surrounding Millstone. That includes Pleasure Beach, that includes Millstone Road East, that includes the neighborhood up on the hill, near the entry to Marlin Drive, right around that neighborhood. And yes, it also affects East Lyme and Niantic. They have to come, and if they think they're affected, they're obviously gonna have to fight their own fight. But I will tell you that it was done under the radar, as evidenced by the number of residents in those neighborhoods who spoke to this body back in October. I will tell you that I had heard nothing about this data center since August. And, you know, it's not like I've been a resident at my house for 3 years. There was no RTM ever that came knocking on the door. Yes, the town of Waterford did do the very minimal of allowing, putting notices up at the town clerk's office and putting them in the newspaper. If you didn't get the paper, or if you don't come to the town hall regularly, to check out the list at the town clerk, you're not gonna know anything about this data center. And virtually every one of the residents of those neighborhoods knew nothing about the data center, and still not everybody knows about it. I would encourage all of you to review my submissions to the RTM back in October. If you need a copy, I'm happy to provide it to you. You can call my office. My home office at 860-442-1294. It outlines the pitfalls of the data center and some of the flaws of the hosting agreement. I know Waterford has a lot to gain, as does the union have a lot to gain if this project goes forward, including potential revenue. But keep in mind, that revenue, if you read the host agreement, that revenue is not guaranteed. It's what they're projecting. If you read the hosting agreement, it says if they don't make the money, then we don't get the money. Go back and read it and look it over and understand it. I'm still flabbergasted at the number of people that this vote was unanimous, and I would be willing to bet dollars to donuts that it wasn't read cover to cover. All I'm asking you is to do your own diligence, not just to follow the leaders who are pushing for this project, namely Paul and Paul. Those are the two that are spearheading this project. And don't just listen and shake your head and say, yes, we agree. You really need to do your due diligence to protect the neighborhoods. I'd also say that this project, while I understand the union will benefit, yes, it's 1 million man hours. It's only a 2 or 3 year project for them. They're gonna have to find work elsewhere as well once the project is done. I'm not sure how our grandson is gonna be working on this project, but that's neither here nor there. The other thing that I see is I keep hearing that 1/4 of the workforce is gonna be from Waterford. There's no guarantee. I did not see that in the host agreement. I haven't seen it anywhere except for people who sit at this table and say that. I have seen nothing in written guarantee to say that a large number of Waterford residents and those students from Waterford are going to be working on the project. There's nothing in there demanding that or requiring that from the host agreement. So again, I just say proceed with caution, and please read the documents, get all the information. Please just don't shake your head to the leaders to say, yep, we agree. It's very important. And the biggest issue is the noise issue for me. And, you know, certainly there are a lot of other issues that's in my, submission to the RTM from October, but the biggest issue is the noise, and there's, you know, even that was poorly drafted in the host agreement as well. So I appreciate your time, and good luck to you in your term. Thank you.
Fred Elgarsima?
Fred Elgersma, Shore Road. I feel that, if this project would proceed, they would choose safe contractors, and it would benefit a lot of people in this area. And it's in the interest of the town to have decent jobs like this available, so I hope you see, the opportunity for us citizens. Thank you.
Brian Sales?
Hello everyone, my name is Brian Sales. I live at 54 Wintergreen Drive in Quaker Hill. I too want to congratulate those who were reelected and also new members of the RTM. And listening to the first talker about signs, I saw a sign a couple days ago driving through Quaker Hill, and it really struck me because it resonated. The mere fact that it showed an elephant going towards the right side of the sign, the donkey going to the left, and it said, it's not about left or right, it's about right or wrong. And I would say to everyone here that regardless of what side of the issue you're on, and that goes for the people in the audience too, that we want to do the right thing. To me, the right thing is people first, money second. While it does provide jobs, they're temporary, 2 to 3 years. While people are members of trades and unions, that's the life they chose, that's the career they chose. And I'm not knocking it, I think it's wonderful. But the fact of the matter is that we're talking about a data center that will impact the human environment, the natural environment, in a very negative way. The human environment, the natural environment, in a very negative way. The problem at the state level is that many of the sound ordinances or standards are outdated. There isn't enough studies done at the state level. Therefore, the towns adopt that same approach. This town cannot even enforce someone making noise and creating sleepless nights for residents along Route 1. In fact, the town has permitted that use and bungled that as far as I'm concerned. So when it comes down to 1.5 million square feet of data center, I don't care how much engineering you think can be done to that. I've heard it said, well, it can be engineered out. You cannot engineer out antitrust. If New England Edge, or any edge, as it's described, plugs into nuclear reactors 2 and 3, that means they bypass the second half of everyone else's bill, which are the infrastructure charges, the social and equity charges, the energy conservation charges, all the components. Half of your bill is made up to try and maintain and reach people through United Illuminating and Eversource. So if all these people involved in the trades, or construction, or manufacturing anywhere, how is that equitable? If someone is allowed to plug directly into reactors 2 and 3, not only is that borderline antitrust, I mean, it does put that in play, frankly. But you also are worried about energy security, because in order to replace that 300 megawatts that's going to be siphoned off, they're going to have to burn more fossil fuel. That's going to be costlier. The spot price on that's going to be costlier. Therefore, it's going to enrich people. And that's probably what this is about. So I don't think there was enough research into this. In fact, I'm confident that there wasn't enough due diligence in looking at this if everyone voted in favor of this from the RTM. And here we are. So again, just to recap, people before profit, right? Temporary jobs can be 120 jobs over 3 shifts, 40 people a shift, in a 1.5 million square foot facility. Yeah, it's a terrible idea. And yeah, Rob, it is a terrible idea. You should never sign the hosting agreement. I'm sorry. Now, I have a letter to read from another member who couldn't be here. This right here, from Michelle Lewis O'Donnell, a psychiatrist, 19 Nichols Lane, Waterford, Connecticut. My name is Michelle Lewis O'Donnell. I attended the last RTM on October 2nd, 2023, and in my public comment expressed my grave concern regarding the lack of transparency with town residents about the proposed data center on the Dominion Millstone site. It was disconcerting to hear at the opening of that meeting in October, when so many residents showed up in opposition to the data center, that the RTM was in a passive role, with little authority to intervene. The NEDGE attorney, Mr. McCoy, made it clear in his update that the host agreement was contractual. How did our town end up in this hog-tied position without a town-wide information meeting, without the normal bidding process on the project, without the critical input of residents? Yes, we residents, who you represent, supposed to. We are not talking about the standard data center, but one that is hyperscale, 1.5 million square feet. What does that really mean? I did a little research to gain a perspective. The standard large data center is 100,000 square feet, so the proposed center is 15 times the size and larger than the square footage of 26 football fields. That's the envelope. Let me repeat, 26 football fields. Connecticut has 17 data centers, and the largest is 168,000 square feet, almost 9 times smaller. Located in Stamford. Most are much smaller than this. NEDGE LLC has no track record in building any data center. Hasn't completed a one. Not even broke ground in one, I don't think yet. Let alone a hyperscale one. It is not surprising that 5 towns, including Groton, have refused to negotiate with NEDGE for this and other reasons, some of which residents have elaborated in the last RTM. We should be taking careful note. In fact, Groton Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously voted in June 2023 to approve regulations to limit the size of data centers to 12,500 square feet. That's 120 times smaller than a proposed center in Waterford, a move that will prevent the development of a hyperscale facilities in the town. This was after a 1-year moratorium on data centers larger than only 5,000 square feet to give the Groton Commission time to decide on how best to regulate the sector. To quote the town manager, John Burt, I agree that it's important to take their time to make sure there are sound rules in place to protect any of our residents should a data center request to locate here in the future. This was a wise course of action in the absence of much needed guidance for communities from the state level to accompany the bill. That's House Bill 6514. To incentivize large-scale data centers in Connecticut. This bill was unwisely rushed to the legislature in early 2021. While we all want to support economic development and sustainability in our community, this massive data center may have long-term implications for the town's economic stability. While there may be initial economic benefits such as welcomed work to the construction sector for a period of 2 years, I'll even edit that to say 3 years possibly, but 2 years. If the data center faces financial challenges or becomes obsolete due to technological advancements, our town may be left with crippling financial burdens. Another concern not much talked about is the potential release of hazardous materials and chemicals used in data center operations, which can pose a direct threat to public health and the environment. Data centers often employ substances like coolant and cleaning agents that, if mishandled or released to the environment, can contaminate water supplies and soils. This contamination could lead to long-term health problems for the local population, including the risk of serious illness and reproductive issues, not to mention the deleterious impact on the marine flora and fauna ecology and biodiversity. Getting to the end here. To conclude, my family, which has continuously lived in Pleasure Beach for over 101 years, opposes this project in the way it has been handled. What could happen now to recalibrate future steps and decisions with inclusion and transparency? Number one, I request again, along with many others, that a townwide information meeting to clearly inform and delineate for residents what has transpired so far. We still don't know. No one's answered the questions about what those milestones are in Gantt chart. Requested by Brian Sales would be a good starting point. This meeting should include a time of listening and discussion with residents to address their concerns. The many rational concerns, for example, raised by Attorney John Valere and his correspondence entered into the minutes of October 2023 RTM. With both the Siting Council and RTM members, Dan rating can be used as talking points as well. Number two, how could Waterford Planning and Zoning Commission work to put regulations in place regarding data center applications and rules of engagement that would establish guardrails to guide town administrators and officials, involve residents, and protect the community? I underscore the question, how could and should residents collaborate in this process to establish sound rules? Residents collaborating. That's been missing since this was announced. It was done under the radar. This initiative would also do well to elicit involvement at the state level so that general guidance applicable to all communities could be efficiently shared and developed. How about that? For instance, guidance around noise assessment and mitigation. It is well known hyperscale data centers are not normally located close to residential areas due to the continuous noise they produce. The Any Edge proposal is only 2,000 feet from Millstone residents. The Dominion Millstone site is uniquely surrounded by water on 3 sides. How will this amplify the noise generated? Does anyone know? Really? We signed up for this and no one really knows.
Brian, are you coming to the end soon, please?
One more paragraph. Thank you. How will this affect the marine environment? We don't want Long Island Sound to become data center sound. In a similar vein to guidance suggested above, it would be crucial to call the state of Connecticut to establish a task force made up of town representatives, for example, to investigate the emerging and substantial evidence around data centers and their negative impact on mental health and well-being. Data centers are a long-term project, potentially a long-term nightmare, literally, if we do not do the due diligence now. Let's not be short-sighted. Thank you for your attention. Michelle Lewis O'Donnell, psychiatrist, 19 Nichols Lane, Waterford. I'm going to give out copies of that. I actually have something about your meeting tomorrow night, the Board of Selectmen meeting, that I want to bring up, and I'm not going to be able to attend that. It's about the message sign and installation to Quaker Hill Green. Here you go, sir. Thank you. It's bid number 23129 LED message sign and installation Quaker Hill Green. For the following reasons, the step of approving a bid award at tomorrow's Board of Selectmen meeting should be postponed. Be advised that I intentionally excluded the contractors' names as their role isn't being called into question. Due diligence by the town of Waterford is my concern. Number one, What was the process of
Brian,
notifying?
excuse me, Brian, if you could please finish up, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish this one letter, I'll hand this one over. I'm gonna finish this one.
Brian,
Let him talk. Let him talk.
Hey, this is pertinent. Yep. Number one, what was the process that notified Quaker Hill residents and how much time was allowed to have an open discussion about placing a brilliant LED sign on an otherwise welcoming postage stamp sized Quaker Hill green? It currently has a wood carved sign, park benches, and a literature book box, and is decorated seasonally and fits the character of the neighborhood. Number two, one more neighbors notified that a brilliant LED message board would be placed adjacent to their homes. Number three, that intersection includes pedestrian crosswalks for children walking to Quaker Hill School or the Quaker Hill Green itself. Why distract motorists with a message board? Is that a risk worth taking? Number four, where is a copy of the building permit and what building codes addresses LED message boards? Number five, second to last, why are you using money from the 2024-2025 traffic control budget for this LED message sign, and is it really considered traffic control? Does it actively regulate traffic? Lastly, this expenditure appears to be rushed and without thoughtful input from Smith Cove neighborhood of Quaker Hill. The following are known dates and milestones according to public record. 11/10, November 10th, bid proposal submitted by contractor. The 13th of November, bids signed and dated in person. The 14th, 3 bids opened. The 16th, Davie notifies and recommends a winner. The 30th, stamped dated official BOS agenda with Davie's recommendation. Lastly, on the 30th, text alert about BOS meeting to approve said recommendation tomorrow. So, yeah, you should probably take our time with this because of all those reasons. Anyway, I'll hand these in too, okay? Thank you. Thank you everyone for your patience.
Is there any other public comment? Is there any other public comment? Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, public comment is now closed. We're gonna move on to item G, committee reports and referrals. On your table or in your packet for item G, in L&A, there's some issues in the Legislative and Administration Committee, Standing Committee. As you get on appointed to your committees tonight, hopefully at the end of the meeting, if you can get together in small groups to choose a chairperson, I greatly appreciate it. Under education, there's nothing in the Education Standing Committee. Under Finance, Wage, and Personnel, there's nothing under that committee. Under Public Health, Recreation, and Environment, there is one item in that committee. In Public Protection and Safety, there are 2 items within that committee. And in Public Works, Planning, and Development, there is 1 item in that committee. Moving on to item H, appointing and liaison updates. We have no appointees or liaisons in any committees that I'm aware of. With Representative Driscoll.
Just a minor point of information. Representative Ted Alinzo is our appointee to the Oswegatchie Fire Station, so we do have his document in
Thank you.
correspondence.
Yep, under correspondence. Ted, would you like to comment on your correspondence, or do you want to go into new business? What would you like?
New business.
You got it. Okay, noting that there's nothing under appointing and liaisons under item H, we're gonna move on to the item I, transaction of the business on the call. Item number 1 is data center update. Gentlemen, would you like to come up and give your update?
Good evening. For the record, Attorney William McCoy. I'm the attorney for Any Edge LLC. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm going to go over, if you don't mind, a little bit of old ground because there are new members of this RTM, and I think it's important to give a little bit of context to how we arrived here. The data center is subject to a host municipal fee agreement which was negotiated with the Board of Selectmen and ratified by the RTM earlier this year. The reasoning behind that host fee agreement is that the state legislature prioritized having data centers within the state of Connecticut and came up with legislation that essentially eliminated the taxability of data centers, but in lieu of that came up with a host fee agreement in which local towns negotiated with a prospective developer for the fees and conditions that data center would meet if it was allowed to be developed in the town. Just as an aside, there have been comments by the public about this being one-sided, ill put together, obviously developed by the developer. I'm here to tell you, as a participant in this process, that nothing could be further from the truth. This was a negotiation over several weeks and is consistent with other host fee agreements which have been negotiated with other municipalities within this state. There was discussion about 5 municipalities turning away data centers. That is not accurate. In fact, there are currently host fee agreements being negotiated in several towns within the state of Connecticut, including those being negotiated by Andy Edge. We move on. Obviously, you've heard from union representatives about the substantial benefit to the town in terms of labor and the benefit of labor to the town. Most importantly, the town, under this host fee agreement, serves to receive $231 million over the life of this host fee agreement, which will assist, in addition to everything else, allow Dominion Energy to extend their term of their permit at the Millstone Power Plant. There are representatives of Dominion here tonight for purposes of taking questions if you need to, but I think the members that were present at the last presentation know that Mr. Mike O'Connor, who is the director of the Millstone Power Plant, made it abundantly clear that Dominion is behind this and is a part of this project. At this point in time, I would go through a few things to update you. One of the comments earlier was concerning the Gantt chart. Like most large projects of this sort, trying to nail down exactly when things are going to happen in a project of this magnitude is very, very difficult. So let me first explain to you what has been going on since we last met, and what has been going on since the host fee agreement. We are currently negotiating with Dominion Energy on a lease agreement and a power purchase agreement. I can't get into the details of those. Those are third-party agreements that generally are not available for complete discussion, but those are intended to determine how we're going to receive power to this data center and what the terms and conditions are of the leasing of the property that the data center sits on. In addition to that, as you can imagine, of a project of this magnitude, there are negotiations concerning financing. There are negotiations concerning lease agreements with the occupiers of the data center. Those are ongoing as of this time and are moving forward as we would expect them to. And in fact, all of the information that we've gotten back from financing has been extremely positive. The one holdup that we have run into is that the state of Connecticut has what is called a siting council. The siting council has jurisdiction over energy production within the state of Connecticut. Dominion Energy, on its own, has requested from the siting council a decision by them that they do not have jurisdiction over this project. That's important in a number of levels, the most important one being that returns the control over the planning of this project back to the local community if the siting council determines that it does not have jurisdiction over this particular site. I can't get into all of the details of the planning process because that would be inappropriate for me to present that to you. You do not have jurisdiction over the planning process, but I can tell you this as an overall summary. This project requires the approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It requires the approval of the Inland Wetlands Commission. It will also require the approval of both federal and state agencies, but on a local level, those two agencies are gonna be required to pass on not only the presence of a data center in the industrial zone, which is now Millstone Point, and also to determine a site plan which will go through the details of the engineering for this project. And by engineering, I don't mean just the construction of the building. In addition to everything else, during the period of time we've been working on this, we have done soil testing to be able to define exactly where the inland wetlands are on the site. We have done work concerning drainage calculations for the buildings themselves to ensure that the drainage of water will not leave the site and negatively impact either Long Island Sound or, for those of you who are familiar with the area, Cranberry Pond, which sits to the east of Millstone Point. Cranberry Pond is a water body that takes water in from the Sound and releases water from Cranberry Pond through a culvert. We do not want to have any flow of water off-site that negatively impacts that water body. You may wonder how I know about these things. I grew up in that neighborhood from 1961 to the present. So I'm very familiar personally, and I happen to own property in the Millstone Point Association area. And so, with all due respect to those people that have said this is going to have a horrible impact, I've lived it. I would not be involved in this project if I thought that was even remotely the case. Now, with respect to the planning process, we expect, although we cannot make an absolute commitment to this because there's still engineering work to be performed, but we expect to be before the Planning and Zoning Commission probably in the early spring of 2024. And parallel with that application for the Planning and Zoning Commission will also be applications for the Inland Wetlands Commission. One of the things that's happened with the design and one of the things that's created some time issues is because of the work on the inland wetlands areas on site, we have redesigned and reduced the footprint of these buildings so as to not negatively impact the inland wetlands. We've identified species and plants that need to be protected in those same areas. Those will be part of the process that we will go through in attempting to get the approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Inland Wetlands Commission. There was concern by some of the members of the audience that there were environmental issues that needed to be addressed. I can assure you those will be addressed in the normal planning process. That would not be your job as an RTM, but you can be assured that you do have excellent commissions and you do have excellent staff to be able to evaluate exactly what's going on. The drainage calculations have not been fully completed because the final designs of the buildings have to be in place in order to do that. One of the probably largest issues that we've encountered from public comment has been sound and noise. We have, within the host fee agreement, section 7, which outlines a very clear understanding about how sound is going to be evaluated and dealt with. In sum substance, section 7 says that this project will not create any more sound off-site than currently exists at the present time. What that means simply is this. All the discussion about noisy data centers, I can assure you, you can go to Virginia and find those. But we are not designing one of those, and our own contract with the town says we're not designing one of those. What will happen is a sound analysis that will be done at the outset, which will be reviewed according to section 7 by your own sound consultants within the town. And thereafter, we will then design to that standard. One of the things that I want to alert you to as an RTM, because you may be called into this, there is a section of the host fee agreement, section 13, that provides that there are certain extensions that can be granted under the agreement if, as a result of delays in getting equipment, we cannot meet the most stringent standards. The reason I point that out is because we have to go out and shop for the best equipment on the market to meet those standards. The availability of that equipment is still somewhat up in the air because it's going to be the best you can get and the quietest you can get, okay? And it's not going to be put on the building unless and until it meets the standards. And at the end of the project, there will be an evaluation done that will show that in fact those standards are met. This is not a situation where it's being done by standards set by the state, because quite candidly, the state doesn't have much in the way of noise standards. This will be done as a standard based upon the current level of sound coming off the property currently. We still have a lot of work to do. We are moving along. We believe very clearly that we are making good progress toward the end. One item that I do want to bring up is there's been in social media, there's been discussion about Any Edge being the source of a lot of litigation. There are no currently any pieces of litigation against Any Edge at all. In fact, the last piece of litigation was in the federal district court in Rhode Island by a gentleman who has filed multiple lawsuits against literally dozens of people, and he doesn't follow through on it. The Rhode Island case came after a Massachusetts case for the same gentleman. It included lawsuits against the mayor of Boston. It included the police chief in Boston. Those pieces of litigation were, put it simply, junk. And they have all been dismissed as of this moment. Any Edge is not the subject of any lawsuits at all. I point that out because I've worked with this group of people for a long time, and I have been impressed with the work that they do, and the proof will be in the pudding when this all gets put in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Inland Wetlands Commission. I have behind me George McLaughlin, who's one of the principals in Any Edge. He's certainly available to take any questions you might have. I was not going to have him speak specifically, but to the extent that you wish to hear from him, he's available to speak. Admittedly, I take exception to Mr. Valliere's comments about the nature of the work that was done concerning the host fee agreement. I think everybody acted in good faith, and I think the host fee agreement was a result of that. Was as a result of a lot of hard work. I will tell you that the town didn't roll over and play dead in that process, and I don't think the RTM rolled over and played dead when it voted in favor of this host fee agreement. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Representative Bono.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, through you. We've heard from the public, and you echoed that in your update about concerns of noise emanating from the data center. And you mentioned Section 7 of the host fee agreement. I believe it's Section 8. Can you correct me on that, Mr. Keppel? It's Section 8. Okay, thank you. So I believe you misspoke, but that's I just want to make sure that we're clear that Section 8 is the sound analysis. I was wondering if town council could give us a little bit of a synopsis on Section 8 and the sound analysis and what that means for the town, and how that helps protect the town's interest. Thank you.
Sure, Nick Keppel. So as Mr. McCoy indicated, we've included in the contract, I want to back up a second, especially for the new members. The state of Connecticut, as Mr. McCoy referenced, now 2 years ago, apparently realized, the legislature realized Connecticut was trailing other states in creating an environment conducive to the phenomenon of data centers. Because we all know, and so the state, through the two bodies in the legislature, decided that Connecticut needs data centers, hyperscale data centers, these large data centers. There's no hyperscale data center currently in Connecticut. Anyway, they adopted legislation that, as Mr. McCoy cites, created basically a very significant incentive to induce companies to come to Connecticut with data centers. Essentially 30 years of no real estate taxes and no personal property taxes. Subject, but they couldn't come to any Connecticut community without a fee agreement. So I want to stress that, as I know most of the veteran RTM members realized and the Board of Selectmen realized, the host fee agreement simply creates the potential, the possibility of there being a data center in Waterford. It just, that's all it does. It doesn't, it's not a signal that Waterford hasn't committed to the building of a data center. It has just authorized the possibility, because if there weren't a host fee agreement, they couldn't even apply to planning and zoning or to our Wetlands Commission, which is our Conservation Commission. So all it did was create the possibility, subject to the terms, and it laid out what those terms would be. We included, candidly, we built upon some provisions in the Wallingford draft host fee agreement, these provisions about sound analysis. And as I think Mr. McCoy accurately reflected, we tried to create what we think is a provision that doesn't exist anywhere in the country regarding noise, which is the building can't be any more noisy. If you read, I'm not going to take your time, but I would encourage you and citizens to read Section 8 in its entirety, because it says there'll be a week-long study of the current pre-building noise levels, and then literally the whole second paragraph is you take the results from that week-long study, and the developer has to come up with a design, which design will be reviewed by the town's expert consultant on noise. The town is going to hire, go out to RFP and find the best noise expert it can find in the country, or if we have to go around the world, because there's a lot of great work being done in UK. And literally the building, it says right in Section 8, the building can't be built without Waterford signing off on the manner in which the design of the building reflects the readings from that week, so as to achieve, when built, the current level of noise in the area. By the way, one other thing that I just would mention, two things. One is that these same provisions are going to go into the zoning regulations. As most of you know, right now, their data centers are not part of the zoning regulations, so they'll have to propose some zoning regulations which allow for this. That will be a completely public process, which by nature, whenever the regulations are considered to be changed, it must be public hearings on that. So, there's going to be, we're going to bring the same language into the zoning regulations to give not only a contractual remedy if they don't abide by it, but a zoning remedy as well. So we're building in two protections for the public with regard to noise. And the other thing that I would just mention is this building, this is not going to be built on, like in Norwich, which they did actually, I think, talk to Norwich. We don't have a big industrial park, okay? So I was curious when Mr. Brian talked about if our town may be left, when he quoted this psychiatrist, Ms. O'Donnell, that our town may be left with crippling financial burdens if something happens with the data center. This is being built on Dominion's property, which has a very large stake by virtue of being the owner of the property in making sure that this building does not create a nuisance for the community. So I think that the decades of responsible ownership by Dominion and its predecessor owners should give the town, residents some comfort that they also, as the owner of the property, are not going to allow this building to have a deleterious effect upon their property or the neighborhood around the property. So I just wanted to mention both of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Mr. Moderator, well, it's probably a coin flip now between me and Representative Keatley as to which District 4 representative lives close to this proposed site, or closest, I should say. And I just want to say, I am committed to making sure that this project and that Section 8 of the host fee agreement comes to fruition. So I just wanted to echo that, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Representative Mullen.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, I'm just wondering the impacts on the pollinators with the data center.
I can speak to that in general terms. The impacts, the environmental impacts are handled through the Inland Wetlands Commission. We are required as part of that process to identify both plant and animal species that need to be addressed within the environmental and conservation regulations. We have not yet, well, I can tell you that a couple of species have been identified. We are designing now to ensure those species will not be negatively impacted. With respect to pollinators, that work is still ongoing. But we have a requirement under the inland wetlands regulations to ensure that it meets the inland wetlands regulations.
Can I comment, Ms. Nolan? Just to give you a sense of scale, because there were some citations about the scale of the building, not to interfere with Mr. McCoy's answer, but I believe the footprint of the two buildings is about 15 acres total. George and Bill, am I right in that area?
You're correct, yeah.
And it's on a site of 500 acres. So they're, in terms of the level of occupation, if you will, of the Dominion property, these are going to be big buildings, no question about it, but they're on a large tract of land, relatively speaking.
Any other discussion? Representative Gerard.
Thank you, Paul, through you. I just had a quick question about the union jobs. So one of the concerns from the residents was where in all of the contractual paperwork is the guarantee that we would have all of these jobs for Waterford. If you could just point us to where that's found, that would be great.
That's found in the state, that's found in the state statute. That is not part of the host fee agreement because the host fee agreement ties back. Yeah, it is echoed, but it derives from the state statute.
But you said multiple times you're trying to get state statutes changed.
Excuse me, ma'am, this is the RTM's time.
Sorry.
Yes, time. Thank you.
I'm not sure, Bill, that it's in the state statute. I think the developer has chosen on its own to sign a labor agreement, but I don't think there's any requirement about it being, but I'll take another look at the statute.
Okay. And again, the developer has committed to that as part of the project as well.
Any other discussion? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I heard some concerns about energy costs, and I know this supposedly uses 300 megawatts, but what percentage of the reactors, the current reactors, is that?
I can tell you,
If I can, this gentleman is gonna be better to answer that question. You can identify yourself for the record.
I'm gonna pull another chair up.
Okay, do that.
Thank you. I'm Mike O'Connor, I'm the site vice president of Millstone Power Station. Thank you. Millstone puts out approximately 2,000 megawatts, so 300 would be about 15% of the output.
Any other discussion? Representative Morissette.
Mr. Moderator, through you. Being new to the RTM, I am still obviously learning about the data center, and I have done a lot of reading, but it's a lot to absorb. So I understand the more short-term benefits of union work, which I'm a union member, I'm a union delegate, I support the union. I understand the concerns on both sides. I'm a major proponent for environmental issues. I guess my question is, and I'm asking this more as because I don't understand, is what would be the long-term overarching financial benefits to the town and to the residents of the town if this data center comes to fruition? Thank you.
That's a very good question. It's somewhat complex, and I'm going to do the best I can. One of the benefits that we have identified early on is that, first of all, Dominion has a permit for the Millstone Point Power Plant that expires. To the extent that we provide a revenue source for them, the benefit to the town is that Millstone stays here, the tax dollars that Millstone generates stay here, the employees of Millstone stay here, and the businesses surrounding that area all derive benefits from that. In addition to that, you have a host fee agreement that provides for annual payments with accelerators over a 30-year period. Now, early on, somebody mentioned, well, what happens if you don't stay open for 30 years? The answer to that question is there is a termination of the agreement allowed for earlier than 30 years. But at that point, this property goes back to being taxable property for the town. So that it is not just what happens if this goes away in 15 years or 20 years. Are we stuck now? The short answer is no. You now have a taxable property in lieu of what was in lieu of taxes by way of the host fee. And if you want more than that, I can provide that, but that's my best answer right now.
Representative Khan.
Just a quick question for the gentleman from Millstone. Just for my own education, I remember vaguely under one of your outages, did you not recently upgrade the generation? Are we not putting out more power at Millstone?
Yes, we did. At Unit 3, we installed a brand new generator on the main electrical side. That allowed us to increase the output of the plant by 1.5% as a result of other mods we did in addition to the generator. In 2008, we were able to increase the output by 7%. So the plant's operating about 8.5% higher than it was during initial construction.
Okay, so the consumption that this facility would need is offset by those increases?
It is not.
It's not?
It's not. The entire output of Millstone is about 2,100 megawatts, and 300 megawatts is about 15% of that.
Okay.
But that wouldn't be accounted for an 8.5% increase.
Okay.
But when we talk about power in Millstone, I don't like to talk about just one piece of one activity that's going on the site in our current view. The license extensions that Attorney McCoy talked about, they're not solely dependent on the data center, but the data center certainly supports keeping the plants in service longer. The activity that's going on, that could go on site with the data center does provide for another off-taker, which relieves the state's transmission system. And if there's eventuality of new power from nuclear at that power plant, there's room for that in the switchyard as a result of having such a large load on site. And so the synergies that are being built with the data center and Millstone Power Station and subsequent license renewal and additional power sources on into our future, these things that we're doing in the next 3 to 5 years make sure clean energy comes out of that peninsula for the next 100 years. And it's up to us to do that responsibly, and that's what I've observed through this process so far.
Last question. How many licenses does Millstone have
Licenses?
for nuclear reactors?
Oh, well, the Unit 2 is licensed to 2035. And Unit 3 is licensed to 2045 right now. Those the initial licenses were extended by 20 years each. And you can see that we haven't even entered the 20-year license extension for Unit 3 yet. And we're about halfway into the 20-year license extension for Unit 2.
Thank you.
Well,
Any other discussion? Yes, I just,
I'll respond to follow up to Ms. Morgan's excellent question about the financial, since there's been some discussion, legitimate concerns about the environmental. I do want to have a clear record about what I believe both the Board of Selectmen, would motivate the Board of Selectmen and the RTM in approving the host fee agreement. The town of Waterford went through, as all of you know, a painful adjustment, reduction in Dominion's contribution to our tax base from about 70% to now 35%. So Dominion pays Waterford $34 million a year as the largest taxpayer. I think what motivated the RTM to carefully consider this host fee agreement is that if with this customer that it would have on site, it stays, let's say, 10 years beyond, just to begin with. If it stays here 10 years longer with each plant, that's 340 million, for every 10 years that, let's say it stays 20 years extra. Maybe it stays a lot longer than that, hopefully. But let's just use a figure of 20. So that's 750 million in round numbers. You've got the 231 million that they're required to pay. If it gets built, they're required to pay it. By the way, if they build two buildings that are 1.2 million or a million, they still have to pay the 231 million. So Attorney Valero was concerned about guarantees. That 230 million at an average of 8 million a year, because that's, so you're talking about rough numbers, $1 billion, okay? Then after 30 years, the tax-free status goes away. This building is going to be constructed to last 50 to 70 years. No one has a crystal ball about what might be used for in 30 years. But chances are,